Welcome in to the Subconscious Mind Mastery Podcast. Thomas Miller here, and I am so excited to bring you this episode. I'll tell you what, when you ask the universe for something, you get it. Well, that's kind of what's been going on here, because our group that was here in North Carolina this past week, as this is being recorded in 2022, talked a lot about muscle testing and intuition and discerning higher self. Well, as you move from basically being in a state of not experiencing any intuitive or higher self connection whatsoever, it's like riding a bicycle. You start with training wheels and you start to move forward, and then you finally get up there where you can ride a road bike if you'd like to. Well, muscle testing is a wonderful technique to be able to begin to tune in to what your higher self is trying to tell you. Well, today, Fred Dodson posted a video on YouTube entitled Self-Muscle Testing, True versus False. It's like an A to Z on muscle testing from a coach's perspective. He starts at the beginning, shows and describes a couple of techniques that he uses, and then practical application. Now, Fred granted me permission to use the audio portion to put in this podcast, but really, if you wanted the full experience, you should watch the video. It's on YouTube. The title again is Self-Muscle Testing, True versus False, and it's on the Frederick Dodson YouTube channel. But if you're working out or mowing the yard or something else, driving down the road, and you would like to catch the audio, you'll get about 95% of it. It is very well done from an audio perspective. A couple of things you might want to watch when you get to a place where you can. Also, this is such important information, and if you do hop over to YouTube, please like the video. That would help Fred out a lot.
Self-muscle testing, true versus false. In the 1970s, the author John Diamond wrote the best-selling book, Your Body Doesn't Lie. It introduced the concept of muscle testing to a wider Western audience based on knowledge already known in the ancient East, in ancient Chinese and Indian medicine. The basic premise of muscle testing is that when your body is exposed to truth, to good, to what supports life, it becomes strong, the muscles become strong, it becomes more healthy, measurably. When your body is confronted or shown something that does not support life, that tends toward death, that is not good, not healthy, the muscles become weak and health declines measurably. For instance, I recently read about scientific experiments that tested whether mouth breathing or nose breathing is better. For this experiment, the subjects closed their noses for the amount of 20 days, breathing only through the mouth, and for the other 20 days, they closed their mouth, breathing only through the nose. And the result was that they found that nose breathing is much more healthy. Nose breathing supports life. Closing the nose does not support life. As important as such scientific experimentation is to discern truth versus falsehood, muscle testing could have delivered those results without all the hassle. You could have muscle tested the concepts of mouth breathing versus nose breathing, and if you had asked your body would have stayed stronger with the nose breathing. In other words, the body is a divinely created, perfect and beautiful measurement system of good versus bad, truth versus falsehood. There was one author in the 1990s who took muscle testing to a whole other level. That was the psychiatrist Dr. David Hawkins, who went ahead and measured anything and everything there is with the muscles of his partner, the muscles of his clients and other people, and he published many books with his findings. He and other authors also developed a scale of consciousness or a scale of emotions based on the different levels of emotion and frequency from low to high. In the year 2010, I published my book, Levels of Energy, but to arrive at my levels and conclusions, I did not use muscle testing. I used pure intuition, as well as a familiarity with all the previous books that had been written on these levels. Why did I use intuition? Because to me, muscle testing is a mere prelude to intuition. Once you've muscle tested many items and things and people and places and times, you'll start knowing most things without testing them, before you even test them, just by a familiarity with the levels, a familiarity with what is generally pro-life and anti-life, what is generally death and what is generally life. You'll know whether something is very negative, middle, positive, or very positive just by hearing it, looking at it, touching it, or feeling into it. While I'm a great fan of muscle testing and its validity, I wouldn't promote it as a substitute for intuition. People often ask me how I arrive at my measurements of seeing things and world events, and it's almost always by intuition. However, you could get the same results using muscle testing. You see, intuition is also the body. It's the body translating non-physical, non-bodily energy, the body translating the soul's information. And if you already feel it before you muscle test, then you don't have to muscle test anymore. But as a beginner, you'll want to do plenty of muscle testing. Now, in order for muscle testing to work, you have to be at a minimum level of consciousness. You have to be in integrity, a whole and integrated being, in a good state, without too strong of a bias or desire or resistance, and not be invested in the outcome of the answer. That's why people like David Hawkins used other people to muscle test, so that his own biases wouldn't interfere with the process. If you're concerned that your beliefs will filter your results and give you false results, then let other people help you with their muscles. Muscle testing is generally referred to as applied kinesiology, or being a part of applied kinesiology. And this science is referred to as a pseudo-science, a fake science, by the pharmaceutical industry-sponsored so-called modern science. But anyone using it will soon find that it's completely accurate and reliable, much more so than the so-called real science. And of course, the pharma-sponsored science would call applied kinesiology a fake science because in muscle testing, people have discovered that pharmaceuticals generally measure weak, make the body weak, whereas most natural things, such as vegetables and fruits, make the body strong, measure as strong. In applied kinesiology, the state in which you can do muscle testing is sometimes referred to as being switched on, or being in the zone, or being turned on, or tuned in. As such, there are certain things in life that turn us off. In those states, we cannot do accurate muscle testing, and our intuition is not accurate, and there are some things that turn us on. Leading an ethical life leaves us turned on. Having integrity, especially silent integrity, leaves us turned on. Having certain values that we follow leaves us turned on. Taming our senses leaves us turned on. The release of guilt, shame, fear, anger leaves us turned on. Living in service of others makes us highly turned on. Cleansing the mind turns us on. Things that turn us off, not surprising, murder, theft, lies, rape, hard drugs, alcohol, sugary foods. Whereas uplifting music, art, poetry, literature, or even natural beauty, just looking at natural beauty, can turn us back on. This is simply to say that you need to be in a good state for muscle testing to work. You'll find many videos online or even books and seminars that teach you how to do muscle testing with others, such as you see in this image. But here, I'd like to teach you self-muscle testing. If you can muscle test without bias. And it looks like this. Make a loop with your thumb and little finger on one of your hands. And then do the same with the thumb and little finger on the other hand. And then try to open one loop with the other using fairly moderate pressure. If you're right-handed, use the left hand as the loop opener. If you're left-handed, use the right hand as the loop opener. If your muscles go weak, it opens easily. If your muscles stay strong or are locked, then it's hard to open. There's another alternative method, which is to press the middle finger on the index finger, but I don't think that method is as good or conclusive as the finger loop method. To demonstrate the power of muscle testing, we'll now check and see with many different ideas and objects. Go and find some toxic chemical in your household. I, for example, have chlorine tablets here that I use for my swimming pool. And also get something beautiful and natural, such as a plant. I've got my little bonsai tree here. And then I'm either going to look at these chemicals or smell them, or even put them against my chest or have someone put them against my chest, which is the most extreme form of muscle testing, because that's where your heart area is. And some say your heart is actually the place in the brain that measures these energy levels and realities. And then I'll muscle test. And you see my fingers open very easily. I'm unable to lock them. And then I'll look at, smell, or touch, or bring to my chest the plant. And muscle test that. And you see my muscle stays strong. My fingers stay locked. So I've just discovered that my chlorine tablets are anti-life, and this bonsai plant is pro-life. I've discerned good and bad, truth and falsehood. Many people think there is no such thing as good or bad, that everything is just good or bad depending on perspective. But that's obviously not true. What's actually true is that something can be good or bad depending upon where you are on the energy scale. For example, why am I using this chlorine tablet knowing it's not good? Well, I put it into my pool to get rid of even worse, such as acid rain. I'm adding a level 200 to get rid of a level 100 reality. So while chlorine tablets are not really that good, in the right dose, it's not poisonous. In a small dose, it's fine and can do a lot of good to even worse. And I add this point intentionally so that you gain a deeper type of discernment that goes beyond just regular black and white thinking, so that you know everything has its purpose and there are many, many levels of good and bad. While it's not true that there is no such thing as good or bad and that everything is equal and the same, it's also not true that there's only good or bad. And I explain this concept of absolutism versus relativism in my book, Levels of Energy, and how neither of these two philosophies are adequate or valid to capture the much greater variety there is in experience. Now, obviously, you can do this with any foods and substances you have in the house. You can do it with objects. You can do it with books. You can do it with anything, and I recommend you start testing a lot. Because the more you test, the more you get a hang of it, and the more you start feeling how your body and your soul and your heart react to the things of life. Now let's try it with a thought. I'd like you to visualize war or a nuclear bomb or something really obviously anti-life, devastating. If you like, use a nuclear bomb and do your self-muscle test. Hold that thought in mind and muscle test. And then hold in mind something obviously pro-life, such as a waterfall, beautiful flower, or an infant, baby. Choose one of them and hold it in mind, and then muscle test. This is also how you'll know whether you are switched on or not. If that didn't work, then you're certainly not switched on. If you're switched on, your body will go weak on the nuclear bomb and stay strong on the baby, even though it was only visualized. Now go online and look at the image of a politician that you dislike the worst politician you can find, and while looking at the image of that politician, do a muscle test. And then look up the image of a politician that you really, really like. And while looking at an image of that politician, do a muscle test. Now you see, I said choose somebody you really dislike and you really like, because I want to teach you something about bias. Your bias can actually distort, your belief can distort accurate results. Your belief is powerful. If you believe a certain politician to be really, really good, that could make your fingers stay strong, even though that politician might not really be that good. You might be shocked to learn that an unbiased muscle testing of politicians in general gives you a result of around 80%, lacking the life-supporting, strong muscle integrous energy. Now, if you want an unbiased reading, you would muscle test both these images with other people. And if they're also biased, what you do is print out the pictures, and the person you're muscle testing does not know who's on the pictures. You place these pictures on the person's chest. You can even tape them to their chest while you muscle test them. Yes, the chest can read what you put on it, as I've explained in a recent video. And if you get a certain politician testing strong time and time again, even in blind experiments, then you know you're dealing with a good politician, which is very rare and very beautiful. So you don't really have to ask me. You can check for yourself. As a natural rule of the thumb, the divinely created world that we call nature usually tests strong, whereas things created by humans only sometimes test strong and sometimes not. Here's an interesting experiment you can do with someone. I described this in a previous article. Draw a left-handed spiral, such as this one, on a piece of paper. And then draw a right-handed spiral, such as this one, on a piece of paper. And hold these spirals up to a person's chest and muscle test them on it. Most people, unless they're energy reversed, the majority of people will test strong on the right-handed spiral and weak on the left-handed spiral. And I don't know why that's the case. I just know it as a fact, because I've tried it with several people. What does it mean to be energy reversed? It's another word for not being switched on, but it's not being switched on to the extreme. There's some kind of issue with that person you may or may not know about that prevents them from muscle testing accurately. Now say out loud, yes, 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 and muscle test. The muscle should stay strong. And then try no, 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 and muscle test. And the muscle should go weak. That's another way to test whether you're switched on or not. And it's what I usually do before using muscle testing for asking questions. Yes, you can use muscle testing for questions. Before we do that, I'd like you to write down a few questions you are curious about. Questions such as, is this stock a wise investment? Is this a good meetup for me? Would that be a good partner for me? Is this avocado good for me right now? Any question you want. Make a list of 3, 4, or 5 questions you're curious about. Put this recording on pause as you do so. Welcome back. The best way to ask questions is by phrasing it with "in the highest good," or "in the name of the highest source," or "in the name of God." And then you ask the question. Let's say you want to invest in a certain thing. So you ask, "In the highest good, is this a wise investment?" And then you muscle test. And if your muscle goes weak, then it's not a wise investment. And if it stays strong, it's a wise investment. You can also go more specific and ask, "In the highest good, is this a wise investment now, or for this year, or within a time frame of the next 3 years?" However, I wouldn't use muscle testing for far future predictions. You'll get the most accurate results by measuring what is so in the now, in the present, in the world today. As soon as you attempt to go psychic and make predictions, accuracy starts to wane. And that's why so many people have a history of failed predictions. You can only judge what's going to happen based on decisions made today. So there are many tendencies that are being developed today, and you can see a few years ahead, but everything can also change based on new decisions. Although I must admit, I have an excellent track record of accurate predictions, sometimes years ahead of time. But these are never things that I looked for or tried to manifest on my own. These are things that came to me by grace, by intuition. I'd like you now to answer your questions using muscle testing on your own. Put this recording on pause as you do so. Welcome back. If you allow for a neutral state, a calm state that doesn't mind either answer, you'll get accurate results. Sometimes the results are not what you want them to be, and you'll just have to learn to mature with that. As you practice intuition and muscle testing, you'll learn a lot of things where you say, well, that's not what I want it to be, but that's just what it is. And by accepting the higher wisdom of your divinely created body, your lovingly created body and soul, you learn and grow. Again, if you're not sure whether you're unbiased or not, ask these questions to somebody else and let them muscle test them. And if you don't want the person to know what's being muscle tested, write it on a piece of paper, hold it against their chest, and then muscle test. If you don't have another person nearby at the moment and you still want to be unbiased, you can do it this way. You can focus on one outcome, a yes answer, and then on a no answer, because muscle testing is only yes or no answers, and you should only ask questions that provide yes or no answers. You focus on the yes outcome, and then you focus on the no outcome for 10 to 30 seconds. And you move back and forth between visualizing those outcomes for a couple of minutes perhaps, until you're okay with both. You're okay with this outcome and okay with that outcome, with no resistance on either side. That's a fairly neutral state in which accurate information, accurate intuition, and accurate muscle testing can arise. If you wish for more specific answers, you can use a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being in the highest good or the best, 1 being the lowest. For example, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, 1 the lowest, this product is above 3, muscle test, above 5, muscle test, above 8, muscle test, and so forth. I'd like you to try this manner of muscle testing right now on your own. Put this recording on pause as you do so. Just one word of caution: don't become a spiritual snob due to muscle testing. Every level of consciousness has its purpose, as I explained with the chlorine. That's a more mature understanding of levels of energy than practiced by most. For more information on intuition, see my books Intuition Training and my latest, The Intuitive Awareness Method. If this presentation was helpful for you, please share it far and wide. Thank you so much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. The whole technique and the 2 intuition books that he mentioned at the end, Intuitive Training and Intuitive Awareness Method, that whole package has made more of a difference in my own life for seeking, obtaining, and then measuring whether I'm on the right track of that higher path, that higher timeline that I have chosen to want to be on as often and frequently as possible, and that I think is so much more important to really be able to discern these finer points, especially now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this helps. The link to the video is in the show notes. And, as always, enjoy the journey.